When your mind is cluttered, your power leaks. Not because you're not intelligent, but because your energy is scattered. The mind is a kingdom, and every thought is a citizen. The problem is that most people rule a chaotic state. They let gossip, anxiety, jealousy, and imaginary scenarios roam free inside their walls. Then they wonder why their focus, confidence, and direction collapse. Machiavelli would call this a weak ruler, one who cannot govern his own mind. Because if your thoughts aren't under control, you're not in power, you're being ruled. So the real question isn't how much you think, it's what deserves to stay. Machiavelli's philosophy was ruthless efficiency. He cut off anything that didn't contribute to survival, strategy, or control. If he applied that same principle to the mind, he'd say this: cut every thought that doesn't build power. That's the foundation of mental minimalism. Not a peaceful blank mind, but a sharpened one. You don't want silence, you want precision. You don't need calm, you need control. Start with this. Most of your thoughts are not your own. They're borrowed, repeated, or implanted. You think about what society tells you to value. You replay what someone said about you 3 days ago. You rehearse future arguments that never happen. You live in a simulation of other people's opinions. And Machiavelli would see this as treason against your mind. Every unnecessary thought is a spy, stealing your attention, your time, your composure. A Machiavellian mind executes spies instantly. Ask yourself, what does this thought do for me? If it doesn't give direction, strength, or understanding, it dies. You don't fight the thought. You don't argue with it. You simply cut it. Like a ruler who doesn't waste time negotiating with rebels. A thought that doesn't build power doesn't belong in your kingdom. This is the art of mental pruning. You don't grow a powerful mind by adding more. You grow it by subtracting. The more mental branches you cut, the more energy flows to what truly matters. You stop entertaining doubts about what's already decided. You stop explaining your choices to people who'll never understand them. You stop analyzing your own feelings like a scientist studying fog. Machiavelli would call that indulgence. Because thought without purpose is weakness in disguise. It feels productive, but it's just movement without progress. Imagine your mind like a council of advisors. Some are wise, others are fools. Every day, they all want to speak. You can't silence the room forever, but you can choose who gets to influence your decisions. Machiavelli would tell you to fire most of them. Keep only the ones that bring solutions, insight, or strategy. The rest? They only exist to drain your willpower. When you remove them, you stop living reactively and start living deliberately. This is where power begins, not in conquering others, but in mastering internal order. A man who can cut his thoughts with discipline becomes impossible to manipulate. Why? Because he's not reacting to bait. He's not pulled by emotional tides. He can hear an insult and remain unmoved. He can face uncertainty and remain decisive. Because his mind is not full of noise. The weak drown in thought because they fear emptiness. They think silence means nothingness. Machiavelli knew the opposite. Silence is dominance. When you can sit without mental chatter, it means your inner court is disciplined. It obeys you. And when it obeys you, your words, your actions, your presence, all carry a weight that others feel. Powerful people think less than others, not because they're simple, but because every thought they keep serves a purpose. They don't think about what might go wrong. They think about what to do if it does. They don't fantasize about revenge. They calculate leverage. They don't replay humiliation. They convert it into motivation. The difference isn't intelligence, it's filtration. You can feel it when someone has that mental minimalism. They speak less, but every word lands. They move calmly, not because they're slow, but because their mind is uncluttered. They have mental gravity. The world revolves around them because they don't revolve around the world. Now here's what most people miss. Cutting useless thoughts doesn't make you emotionless. It makes your emotions serve you instead of sabotage you. If you're angry, Use it to sharpen your focus. If you're jealous, let it expose what you truly want. Every emotion has a purpose, but not every reaction deserves expression. Machiavelli would say emotion is a tool, not a truth. Handle it like a blade, sharp, dangerous, and useful only when controlled. Start testing your thoughts like soldiers. Every idea must prove its worth. Does it make you stronger, smarter, harder to manipulate? If not, it's discharged. Most of what passes through your mind daily wouldn't survive that inspection. Thoughts of regret, comparison, guilt. These are deserters pretending to be loyal. They serve no cause except to weaken morale. When you let them stay, they invite more of their kind. Before you know it, your mind becomes an occupied territory. And once your mental territory is occupied, others can rule you without even speaking. All they have to do is trigger you. They know which words will haunt you, which reminders will sting, which opinions will distract you. You've made yourself predictable. Machiavelli's entire system of power was built on unpredictability, never letting others map your reactions. But that begins with uncluttering your mind. If they can predict your thoughts, they already control your outcomes. Cutting thoughts doesn't mean suppressing them. It means starving them. When a useless thought appears, you don't feed it with attention. You observe it, recognize it's irrelevant, and redirect your energy. Over time, your mind learns what kind of thinking earns attention and what doesn't. You become your own propagandist, programming your mind to reward clarity, not chaos. Think of it like this. Your attention is your currency, and every thought demands payment. Most people spend it like fools. They fund fantasies, fears, and grudges. Then they complain about being broke, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. A Machiavellian mind invests. It funds thoughts that generate returns, insight, strategy, or strength. Everything else is a scam. And this isn't about constant control either. There's a difference between discipline and obsession. Machiavelli wouldn't want you micromanaging every neuron. He'd tell you to build systems, mental habits that naturally align your thoughts toward power. For instance, replace "why did this happen to me?" with "what advantage can I extract from this?" That one swap alone eliminates hours of useless mental loops. It doesn't ignore pain, it weaponizes it. Another habit: treat overthinking like taxation. The more you indulge it, the more your mental economy collapses. Every time you replay a scenario, you're taxing your energy twice for the same event. The first was when it happened. The second is your choice to relive it. Machiavelli would say, "A wise ruler does not tax his people unnecessarily." The same applies to your thoughts. Tax only what's productive. Analyze, then act. Never analyze endlessly. You can apply this even to your goals. Most people confuse ambition with clutter. They think more goals equal more progress. But spreading your focus too thin weakens everything. Machiavelli would advise, one war at a time. Conquer one domain fully before moving to the next. Every victory compounds your confidence and cleans your mind of divided intentions. Mental minimalism isn't aesthetic, it's strategic. It's not about peace, it's about precision. You want your mind to operate like a blade, nothing extra, nothing dull. Every thought you allow in should either cut through confusion or build the empire within. Anything else is noise, and power cannot coexist with noise. When you start cutting useless thoughts, you'll notice something strange. Your life begins to simplify itself. You start attracting people who match your discipline and losing those who feed on your distraction. Conversations shorten but deepen. Goals shrink but strengthen. Even your emotional reactions become slower, heavier, more deliberate. That's when you know you've stopped being reactive and started being sovereign. Because the moment you stop feeding every thought, you begin to choose which ones define you. That's when control returns and power follows. The mind is not meant to be full, it's meant to be sharp, and sharpness only comes from cutting away what dulls you. every distraction, every insecurity, every internal debate, it's either serving your power or stealing it. Choose accordingly. Cut every thought that doesn't build power, because the kingdom you're trying to rule begins inside your head, and only a ruthless ruler deserves the throne. Once your thoughts begin serving your power, something profound happens. You stop chasing peace and start creating it. Because peace isn't what you find when the world quiets down. It's what emerges when your mind does. And Machiavelli would say, a ruler who can keep order within can bend chaos without. Most people want freedom from their thoughts, but they don't realize that true freedom comes from authority, not escape. You don't silence your mind by running from it. You silence it by making it obey. Mental minimalism isn't about emptiness. It's about hierarchy. Every thought has a rank. Some are generals that strategize. Others are soldiers that execute. But the problem is that most people let the peasants, the random worries, the emotional reactions, sit on the throne. That's why they feel overwhelmed. Machiavelli would have purged the court. The moment a thought disrespects your order, it's demoted or dismissed. This isn't cruelty, it's governance. But here's what makes this discipline so powerful. When you start cutting unnecessary thoughts, your energy condenses. Your presence changes. You stop leaking emotion. You stop revealing your weaknesses. You become unpredictable again. People can't read you because even you don't react in predictable ways anymore. Your responses are chosen, not automatic. And that unpredictability makes others tread carefully. They sense you think before you feel. That's the Machiavellian signature. Emotional restraint as psychological dominance. Think about how much of your day is lost to thinking about what others think of you. That's the loudest parasite in most people's minds. Machiavelli would have burned it alive. Because the moment you start managing impressions instead of building substance, you become dependent. You bend your actions, words, even beliefs to fit external approval. And every ounce of that effort is a tax on your mental strength. The Machiavellian cure? Reverse the equation. Don't think, what will they think of me? Think, how do I make them think what I want them to? That subtle shift takes you from insecurity to influence. You're no longer reacting to perception, you're engineering it. That's the real power of mental minimalism. It gives you enough space to think strategically instead of emotionally. But let's get practical for a moment. You can't control every thought, but you can control the first 5 seconds after it appears. When a useless thought enters, an insult replay, a regret, an anxious what if, your power is in that window. Most people start feeding it instantly. They entertain it, analyze it, spiral with it. Machiavelli would have done the opposite. Pause, evaluate, eliminate. Does it build control or does it drain it? If it drains, it dies. No discussion, no second chance. That 5-second discipline can change everything. Over time, your mind starts to understand what's rewarded. It learns that idle speculation, self-pity, and guilt don't get attention. It starts producing thoughts that are sharper, leaner, more useful. You've trained it to think like a strategist. It's not about repression, it's conditioning. Just like Machiavelli trained rulers to act from calculation rather than impulse, you're training your own mind to operate from purpose, not noise. You'll notice another side effect. Your tolerance for drama evaporates. When your mental world becomes ordered, chaos in the outer world becomes unbearable. You'll start distancing yourself from people who thrive on confusion. You'll see that they're addicted to noise because silence forces them to face themselves. You'll stop trying to fix them. You'll simply outgrow them. And that's not arrogance. It's the natural result of clarity. Machiavelli would say that clarity is the ultimate weapon. A ruler who sees things as they are, without distortion, can manipulate any situation. That's what cutting mental clutter does. It clears the fog of emotion that clouds judgment. The more you see reality cleanly, the more advantage you gain. Because most people don't act based on reality. They act based on perception. If you can see through both, the truth and the illusion, you're already 2 moves ahead. And this clarity has another consequence. You stop fearing solitude. Because when your thoughts no longer attack you, being alone feels like power, not punishment. The mind becomes a fortress, not a prison. You realize how much of your anxiety came from being surrounded by noise, both social and mental. Machiavelli would admire this solitude, because it's the kind that breeds control. The ruler who thinks independently becomes uncorruptible. Eventually, you start using thought like a weapon, only drawn when necessary, always precise. You start to think less about what's fair and more about what's effective. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" You develop what Machiavelli would call a cold focus, the ability to look at reality without wishing it were different. That's the highest form of power, acceptance without submission, seeing things as they are and still deciding how to use them. Mental minimalism isn't coldness, it's clarity disguised as calm. You're not detached from life, you're simply no longer enslaved by it. You've become selective. You think only what's necessary, feel only what's useful, act only when strategic. That's why minimalism is dangerous, because it creates an aura of peace that's not passive, it's predatory. Still waters that drown the unprepared. And this is what most people will misunderstand about your new calm. They'll think you've become distant, emotionless, maybe even arrogant. But that's just projection from their own chaos. They need constant stimulation to feel alive. You've simply removed the noise that kept you small. They won't understand it, but they'll feel it. Because power isn't loud. It's the silence that makes others nervous. When you master cutting your thoughts, you'll notice time itself changes. The days feel longer, but lighter. You stop feeling rushed, because rush is born from fragmentation, your mind jumping between 10 directions. When you think only what's needed, you move with rhythm. Machiavelli would call that tempo, the art of acting neither too soon nor too late. The calm ruler strikes only once, but always at the perfect moment. The goal isn't to stop thinking, it's to think like a king. Every thought must serve a purpose. Every word must serve a strategy. Every silence must serve a signal. You don't have to fill every space. In fact, the gaps are where your power breathes. People fear emptiness because they confuse it with weakness. But in truth, emptiness is potential. The blank space before creation. The pause before domination. Cut every thought that doesn't build power, and what remains will reshape who you are. Your focus becomes unshakable. Your emotions, disciplined. Your presence, magnetic. Because when your mind becomes minimal, your power becomes maximal. You've stopped being a servant of thought and become its master. And that is when the world starts bending quietly, inevitably, toward your will.